Welcome to Voices of IIS, a space to learn about the wonderful people who work at IIS, explore fresh perspectives, and hopefully get inspired. Originally from Iran, Dr. Daryoush Mohammad Poor received his PhD in Political and Social Studies from the University of Westminster. He is an associate professor and the interim head of Constituency Studies in the Department of Academic Research. Daryoush's research interests include Ismaili studies, Shi'i studies, political theory and philosophy, contemporary Muslim politics, and the intellectual history of Muslims. He is the editor of IIS's Ismaili Heritage Series, a fellow of the Higher Education Academy in the UK, and is the author or translator of several publications, including Authority Without Territory, the Aga Khan Development Network and the Ismaili Imamate, Command and Creation, a Shi'i cosmological treatise, and the First Aga Khan, Memoirs of the 46th Ismaili Imam. Welcome, Daryoush, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, can you tell us, let's start with going back, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to IIS?
Okay, my journey to the IIS is a kind of a strange one in the sense that I always dreamed of coming to the IIS, but I came through a very strange trajectory. Because I was a student of mathematics and in Iran, and for about 5 years, and then I quit almost in the last semester because my mind was elsewhere. But I was learning English from a very young age, so I was about 16 years when I qualified as an English teacher in a very reputable institute in Mashhad, where I was living at the time. And I always wanted to come to the IIS, but because I hadn't finished my first degree, I was not able to apply for a JIPIsh program, and then I continued teaching and doing translation work in Iran. But then the community institutions, the Ismaili institutions in Iran got established, and I was recruited as the executive officer of the Council for Iran. This was in 2001, I think. Before that, actually, something had happened, and I had met with Professor Azim Nanji, who had visited Iran along with Dr. Shafiq Zashidina for high-level diplomatic negotiations with the Iranian government to establish our community institutions, or at least to give them a formal structure. And I met with them. I was the translator as well, and I met with senior leaders before. And we had a long walk with Professor Nanji at that time, in Mashhad at that time, because at that time I was teaching in a gas refinery for the students of the staff there. And I was invited to Mashhad to accompany our IIS and leadership people to be at their disposal for the translation and everything that they needed. So we had a long chat on intellectual matters, philosophical issues, which was always my area of interest, really. And Professor Nanji was very much interested in this line of thought that I had. And, of course, the barrier was that I didn't have a first degree. So the way to do it is that I needed to be in the UK on a student visa to be able to establish myself somehow so that I could join the IIS. So I came here on a student visa, one of those typical student visas that people go to colleges here in the UK. And when I arrived, I immediately from the airport, I just took the train, the Piccadilly line. I came to the IIS, which was there at that time in Grosvenor Gardens in Victoria, and I had a desk there. And even though I was a student, I was required to do some work for the IIS, some translation work. Legally, I was entitled to work for 20 hours or something like that. And I continued doing my college work, whatever it was. And during this period of 6-7 months or so, I explored opportunities to pursue my graduate studies, and I managed to get into the University of Westminster to do international relations and contemporary political theory. Now, that course was strange in a way because I wanted to do philosophy of science, which is what I'm crazy about. And the courses that I was trying, none of them actually fit in my area. So one day on an open day course at Westminster, I ended up in one of the campuses of the University of Westminster, and then I saw a lot of scholars and professors there who were talking about human sciences, and I figured out, okay, They're teaching people about Freud, about Karl Popper, about Bourdieu, about Marx, about all these huge figures that I'm so crazy to learn about. So, well, this is the one that I need. And it is political science as well. So I started doing my MA. So when I finished my MA, I found a job at the IIS as a translator. So I started working for the Encyclopaedia project. And of course, I had been doing translation work for the IIS for different departments. At that time, I was working with Project Tajikistan because they had a lot of work which was in Farsi, English, and it sort of overlapped with the areas that they worked in. So that was my entry point.
So I want to go back to something that you've now mentioned twice. You said, I've always wanted to be at IIS. I had always wanted to be at IIS.
Yes.
So can you speak a little to sort of like growing up in your context, and where was it that you first learned about IIS, or was there a particular experience or something you read or someone you met where you just sort of felt that connection, like that I want to be there?
I'll tell you exactly where it started.
Oh, good.
So in Iran, we have a graduate of the IIS. He's still living in Iran. Ghulam Zamir Shahi. He used to be one of the very, very early graduates of the IIS. He was a classmate of Nuruddin Aladdin, Rahmat Qasemi, the very, very early graduates of the IIS at the very beginning of it. And he had come to the IIS, he graduated from the IIS, he went back to Iran, and he stayed in Iran, unlike many of his other colleagues who left Iran. And he was a teacher. He was what here we call an IIS. And he was also my entry point into the other passion that I had, which was the English language. So he used to visit our local Jamaat Khana in Mashhad every Friday. And one of the things that he did is that he had found an ingenious way of teaching us English. He was giving the farmans of the Imam to us in English, and we would learn them and we would recite them. And of course, I was carrying on my own English learning. But after a while, I found something which really resonated with me. Here I had a guy who had come to London, who had looked at the output of an institute which is created by the Ismaili Imam to produce, to preserve the literature, the language of the Ismaili community from the past in a systematic, methodological way, in an organized way which is befitting the times in which we're living. And of course it sounded fabulous because there was no other place in the world who was doing this. But of course it was a very distant dream, so it was nothing other than a dream. I was going into all kinds of directions. But this is how life is. You make decisions and then you end up in places where you have no control over and somebody just places you there. You don't make those decisions on your own and you end up being there. So this is how I ended up here. So this is one element of it. The other element of it, of course, is that service to the community has been a long tradition in my family, my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. My maternal grandmother was among the very first and a few people who traveled from Iran to India at that time to visit Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah, and he was given among a group of other people the specific task to go and build schools in Iran. So we've got one in our family, a taliqa from the Imam addressed to him, telling him that during this period you should start building schools for boys and girls, etc., etc. This is how you should do it. And so there is that legacy as well in the family. It goes back generations. So it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's a long family tradition, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's really fascinating. So being at is particularly meaningful on so many different fronts. So can you share with us what it means to you being part of the IIS, both professionally but also personally?
Okay, let me tell you what it means to me personally. It means to me personally in the sense that the IIS is my natural intellectual and spiritual home. And when I say a spiritual home, I do not mean something cuckoo, something strange. People refer to spiritual as something which is inexplicable, which is, beyond anybody's understanding. When I say spiritual, I'm talking about something which gives meaning to your life, which gives direction to your life, so that every single day that you wake up in the morning, you have a purpose in your life. And that lies at the center of what being an Ismaili is about. And that is one's connection with a present, living, accessible Imam. Because let's not forget about this. This IIS is only the IIS. It only matters because of that very single individual. Otherwise, it could be any other institution. To me, it's irrelevant if Cambridge or Oxford or Harvard is doing something like that. It would be a niche academic area. Here, the IIS is not just an academic place. It's my home. It's my family. When I talk to you, I just do not talk to a colleague. There is something beneath it which connects me with you, not just as a human being, but also as a fellow Ismaili. And it's very strange that this is what I call a spiritual bond. That the spiritual bond cannot be explained in any other way. The fellow sitting next to me is from Pakistan. You're from East Africa or from Canada or the United States or Portugal or France or Pakistan or Afghanistan or Syria. And yet, the moment we interact with one another, it's as if we have known each other for over 1,000 years. And that is the most important element of being here. But then the IIS has done something else, and I think that was under the guidance of our 49th Imam, Shah Karim Shah, who steered the IIS to the level that it is today. And I think it has reached a stage where it was unprecedented in the history of Ismailis. I've written about this in my first book, and hopefully even my next one, which is a maybe sequel to the first one, comes out. I will explain that further, that Imam was a visionary man. And he created something at the IIS which in simple terms could be explained under the rubric of keeping a balance between faith and intellect, of making sure that these two are not at odds with one another. I'm not sure whether that has yet settled. We've yet been able to deliver that successfully or not, but I think that is my objective. And the objective is very clear, that simply because I'm an academic, it doesn't mean that my language should be undecipherable for ordinary people. That when I speak to ordinary members of the community, they get intimidated by the jargons that I throw at them. Being here has taught me how to move beyond those limitations of being able to communicate to people without throwing jargons at them, by being able to reach to their hearts and their minds and move them, and at the same time stay true to my intellect, to my conscience, and of course to all the values that I have. What I see here is a space where I could actually see these two aspects, faith and intellect, interacting with one another. So when I teach my module on intellectual traditions, all my students know that when I start a methodology session, they know that the biggest question we have in the room is the question of truth. It's epistemology. And that epistemological question gets transformed, gets re-discussed in so many different sessions that we have during our courses. And if you listen to the students that I've had over the years, you will see that constant element repeated all the time. So that's what I live here at the IIS, as long as I live at the IIS.
And you've already spoken about some of your passions, right? So even though you started in mathematics, you were like, well, that's just not where I was meant to be. And you started speaking about things that sort of excited you. So maybe you could share with us some of your current research and what drew you to this area and how that connects with the wider intellectual mission of IIS.
Okay. So when I was a student of mathematics, there were 2 or 3 courses which were particularly of interest to me, and it actually sparked my interest when I was doing my undergrad. There were basically 3 courses. One of them was philosophy of science. The other one was history of science, which was primarily mathematics, but still it touched on physics as well. And the other one was logic, mathematical logic. When I left my mathematical studies, I always put them in a box somewhere. I shelved them away, but they got resurrected when I was at Westminster. It got resurrected almost at the end of my doctoral research, because my second supervisor was a very passionate critical rationalist. And he was into analytical philosophy, and you know that analytical philosophy has its natural home in England. The Anglo-Saxon tradition is very rich in doing analytical philosophy. And of course, Karl Popper, who was one of the prominent philosophers of critical rationalism and philosophy of science, was here at LSE, which was his home, and of course he changed the life of many generations of scholars. So what I had is coming from a scientific philosophical background, passing through the corridors of politics, political theory, political philosophy, and at the same time, I had an interest in poetry, in Persian literature, which you will find out that it's still running along the rest of my life. So it's not just about an austere person who deals with physics and mathematics and philosophy, but I live with calligraphy, with poetry, with music. They are inseparable parts of my life. So the intersection of that with the IIS is that there were certain areas of the work of the IIS which were of archaeological importance, so to speak, because they were digging into the past. They were preserving and producing the literature from previous centuries, to some of which I have made contributions myself, editing, translating of texts of medieval times, but at the same time doing secondary studies on them. That secondary studies is what is relevant today. Now, the real question that I've always been asking myself, and I keep asking every day, how would someone like Hamid ad-Din al-Kermani or Al-Mayed Faddin al-Shirazi or Nasr Khusro or Tusi write or think about the problems of the world of today, of the 21st century? And my immediate answer is that if I was ever going to be like them, it would be a disservice to them if I just reproduced whatever they said verbatim, because they are the peaks of it. You should either go higher than them, or you should do something entirely different that they haven't done. And I think that if these guys lived, and I think they were very brilliant people, they would have done something different. In our times, they get the best of the educations they can find in various branches of sciences, in liberal arts, and equip themselves with the most important tools of critical thinking in our times, and produce something new. Producing something new does not mean you do not have access to the past. You have to have access to the past. You need to know your primary sources very well. For me, knowing English, Farsi, and Arabic at the same time is an indispensable tool of my business, of my profession. Without knowing these three languages at the same time, I would be incapable of doing what I'm doing, because I can switch easily from English into Farsi into Arabic and back and forth, not just when I'm doing translation work, but even when I'm delivering a speech, I could easily move between them. And that is something that I developed at a young age. I lived with it, but over time, being at the IIS, having opportunities of traveling around the globe, interacting with the Ismaili community, speaking to them, teaching for them, because I have taught for almost every single education program that the IIS has had in its history, whether it's for our graduate program students, for the Wazin training, for the leadership training program, for the IMTPs, whatever they have been, or short courses. One short course that I managed for a long time, short course on Islam. I started teaching with the summer program on Islam that we used to run with Cambridge, Oxford, I think. And then it had its own life. So during these teaching episodes and then teaching at the IIS, I honed my skills not just as a scholar, but as a speaker, as an orator as well. But then the most important asset at my disposal was my audience. I don't learn things on my own. I don't just read books. Those who've been my students know that I always test my theories in class. The most radical theories that I have about Ismaili philosophy or about any theoretical matter, I share it with my students. And one of the first things that I tell my students is that never underestimate yourselves. Each one of you could be greater than Nasr Khusro, Sijistani, and Kermani. Do not ever allow anybody to tell you that these are the peaks which are not conquerable. They are human beings like you. Believe in yourself, have confidence in it, and then you can achieve it. And I learn from them, and they teach me a lot, every single year.
I think that's the beauty of being a teacher, isn't it?
Yes.
Or one of the things. So you have been with IIS for over 20 years, which is just fantastic. And I'm sure over the last 2 decades, you've seen IIS evolve in many different ways. And are there any particular experiences or achievements that stand out to you or that are particularly meaningful to you?
Let me tell you something which is immediately in front of me, and I think this has been a great achievement at the IIS, and this is something which has happened over the last few years. And that has come about in the communications department. And I'll tell you why. Because for quite a long time, the IIS website started a long time ago. Mm-hmm. For some time it operated well, then we had several languages on it, then it fell into oblivion. Now it's gradually being resurrected. I'm not talking about the linguistic side of it. I'm talking about its accessibility. Now, the IIS is now available as a website, which is now a very beautiful website. It's available on social media. It's got many videos. So let's imagine I am, a teenager of 16, 17 years old in Iran who knows English, or in Afghanistan, or in Tajikistan. And I wanted to have an indispensable source of knowledge to learn things about my tradition. The IIS website and its YouTube channel is incredible. Going back to those material, I'm being very honest about this. Some of the things that I even teach in my classes, I've just stumbled upon when browsing through the IIS website. There was a long time ago, when we were, I think, in the Grosvenor Garden buildings, there was a conference held on Orientalism. People like Bosworth, Arkoun, Madelung, a number of other people had actually spoken there. And there were videos of them which were available. Later on, I found out that whole conference had turned into a book which was edited by Azim Nanji, and I made that book an essential reading of my students when I teach them methodology. It changed my life. That was a part of it, which was really critical. And of course, we had the legacy of people like Mohammad Arkoun here. The late Mohammad Arkoun was somebody who had a profound impact on my way of thinking. Not that I thought like him, but because of his intellectual honesty. Because I do have differences with him. My methodology is different from his, but everybody who's seen Arkoun, he knows that Arkoun was a very passionate speaker, was a very eloquent speaker, and he would suddenly burst into a conversation and mesmerize you and rivet you when he was talking about the topics that he was interested in. He was a driving force behind how I imagined that I would engage with my work. We have had a few of them, and Arkoun, I think, was one of the good examples that we have had at the IIS. So one of the good things about the IIS is that over the years, and I hope this will continue in the coming years, it will become better, we've had some of the most prominent scholars in Oriental studies, in Ismaili studies, people like the late Wilfred Madelung, Herman Landolt. Now we have Amir Moezi, we've had Mohammad Arkoun, we've had a number of other people who have contributed significantly to the intellectual life of the IIS. And I think that was a result of the vision that the Imam had for the IIS, that if you want to make the IIS a brilliant place, you need to attract the best intellectual sources around you. And I think, let me give you a flip side. The flip side of the story is that if the IIS is going to flourish, it flourishes with people who've got the intellectual asset. If the IIS is filled with mediocre minds, with people who do not have, who are shallow in their intellectual approaches, who are not critical enough, who are incapable of exposing their own ideas to test, to falsifiability. Because the most important job of an intellectual is not to challenge others. Are you capable of putting your own ideas to test? So I stick my own neck out for refutation and say, Selina, come here, this is my idea, do your best to shoot it down, and then I will have a conversation with you. That's the process through which I learn, and you learn, and everybody else learns as well. So the flip side is how to keep the intellectual vitality of the place alive. And I hope that the next 50 years of the IIS will bring the IIS to higher peaks.
From your lips to God's ears. Let's go back to your area of research and things that you're working on and you're excited by. Can you speak to us a little bit about sort of any projects or ideas that you're excited about right now, or that you are working on right now, or that you're looking to be doing sometime in the near future?
I'll tell you what I've been working on and what continues in that work. Ismaili philosophy is my passion, all right? And when I say Ismaili philosophy has intersections with philosophy of science, with history of science, with literature, with mysticism. It's not one single route. But of course, the overarching title for that would be Ismaili philosophy. Now, one of the issues that I've always had in the past is that when I looked at the works of people like Madalong, like Korban, like Ivanov, like Daftari, who were coming from different backgrounds, history, philosophy, etc., I saw their narrative of Ismaili philosophy or Ismaili thought in disparate areas. We did not have a contiguous narrative of history, thought, philosophy, etc., all of them together in one piece. So one of the things that I wanted to achieve when I convened that conference, the Ismaili Studies State of the Field, was to bring that one step closer to producing a volume which is comparable to that series that this philosopher at King's College, who's produced this series, History of Philosophy Without Gap, can't remember his name. Anyways, you can figure that out later. He wrote a history of philosophy without gaps. So I thought of something like that. Can we produce something like that in Ismaili history? And of course, it's a very difficult task because how can you produce an Ismaili philosophy without gaps, where you've got a community which is scattered all around the globe? And how can you bring under one rubric Ismaili traditions from Iran, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Syria, South Asia? And at the beginning of it, it looks almost impossible, but it's not impossible. The way to do it is to be able to discover, to figure out the methodology which could bring them all together. So the methodology is like that thread which brings all those pieces of a tasbih together. That's what I really needed. And I think I have stumbled upon something which is minimally, and I say minimally because it cannot be maximally useful for that job. And that is the methodology of critical rationalism, which if you've been exposed to what I've been teaching or I've talked, you would see that it's a permanent part of what I do. And over the past 10, 15 years, in every conference that I've gone, you see all elements of my Ismaili thought with that methodology, because that methodology is just like holding your hand to bring all these different threads together so that you could create that bigger tapestry. Mm-hmm. So it's a work in progress. What happens out of it is that everything that I write on a daily basis, I was just looking at my papers over the past 10 years. I think I've got about 10, 15 papers that I haven't yet published, and I'm just revising them, putting them together, reviewing them. I'm preparing them one by one for publication. So hopefully in the next couple of years, I'll have a long list of articles out. And when they go to journals and they get peer-reviewed and they get their feedback.
So basically, watch this space.
Watch this space.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, look, before we close, is there anything that we haven't touched on, whether it's something about your work or your interests or your upbringing, basically just what inspires you that you would like to share with the audience?
I could have told you something very straightforward, but let me change the gear and connect it. There is one thing which is very important. What really inspires me is life. It's that simple. And life has got many dimensions, many aspects to it. So when I say life, my wife is important to me. My daughter is important to me. My 3 cats, our 3 cats are important to me. My calligraphy is important to me. My music is important to me. And when I say my calligraphy, my music, I'm a novice in all of them. I just swim in them. I don't know how good I am in them. I don't know how bad I am in them. All I do is that when I start doing calligraphy, I can spend 3-4 hours just practicing calligraphy. It doesn't matter when, where, how, without knowing how time flies. The same happens with music. The same happens with my writing. So I think it's an important lesson in life that once you do something, you do it with such passion that once you engage in it, you can spend hours doing it without knowing how time has passed by. And I think that is the magic of life. And we should be able to bring that element of living and breathing in our every moment of life to shine before us. Otherwise, life becomes boring.
Well, it's that element of being human and all that encompasses that, all those various aspects. Now, for those of you who aren't in the room, which is everyone in our audience, there's a beautiful instrument that sat right in between Daryoush and I. And if he would indulge the audience by maybe playing for a minute or so.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you.
All right, then. So this instrument is called a sitar. Of course, there are a lot of things that I could play. Let me think about something which is very straightforward and very simple. This is a piece in Mahur. It should take us about a minute or two.
Amazing. Thank you so much for indulging us, Daryoush. And actually, that's all the time we have for today. What an amazing way to end, actually, today's interview. So a big, huge thank you to Dr. Daryoush Mohammad Poor for spending time with us today, for sharing your stories and your beautiful music with us. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I would encourage everyone to please continue to visit the IIS website to learn more about Daryoush's research and, in fact, to keep abreast of all of his forthcoming work. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We know that there are plenty of podcasts out there, and we are grateful you spent your time with us. If you like this episode, please make sure to follow or subscribe on Spotify or wherever you enjoy your podcasts.